Hello, Professor. My name is Arpita, and welcome to my short story presentation. So, the topic that I've chosen for my presentation today is called Everything That We Need to Know About AutoML. So, the research paper that I've used for reference is called AutoML, a survey of the state of the art. So, it was published on 16th of April 2021. So now let's dive right into the presentation. So this is our problem statement. So I'm sure that at some point, each of us would have encountered these problems in our ML journey. So problems like tired of figuring out which model to use for our use case, tired of feature selection and hyperparameter tuning. So it's at this point that AutoML is introduced. So there's another problem that's worth noting, and it's about deep learning techniques. So we know that deep learning today is doing exceptionally well. So it's proven to perform remarkably on image classification, object detection, and language modeling tasks as well. So the development here using deep learning relies heavily on human expertise, and even experts sometimes require a lot of time and resources to develop these systems. So AutoML actually helps in removing the need for humans in the loop by automating the entire ML pipeline and also thereby reducing the computational burden that's encountered. So now let's see exactly what AutoML is. So AutoML is a process of automating the construction of a machine learning pipeline on a limited budget by enabling even infants in the field to build ML applications. So a complete AutoML system is beginner friendly and helps us to build an end-to-end ML pipeline. So now let's see the main stages that are involved in AutoML. So the first stage being data preparation, feature engineering, followed by model generation and model estimation. So these are the four stages. So now let's understand each of these stage. So we will understand what these phases indicate, what it is exactly, and then we can see some of the automated techniques that are available. So the first of the stages being data preparation. We know data preparation is a building block of ML pipeline. So there are three main aspects to it. So using this flowchart, we can understand more about these aspects. So when we start off, we first see if there's enough data. Now, when we do not have enough data, that's when data collection comes into the picture. So we also check if there are any existing data sets. So if we do have existing data sets, we go into data searching. When we do not have existing data sets, we go into data synthesis. So we build it from scratch. Now, when we do have enough data, so that is data collection is over, we check for the quality of the data set. So if the quality has to be improved, we go into data cleaning. Otherwise, we move right into data augmentation followed by model training. Now, let's understand exactly what data collection does. So it involves building and enhancing an existing data set. So this is it is very important to have the right data set for an ML system. So it is a very challenging task. Now to solve this, we have two strategies. One is data searching and one is data synthesis. So exactly what data searching is, this is the most okay. So we know that web data is the most common source of data, and this data is inexhaustible. So it is really difficult to search the web for this. So there are some problems that are associated with web data. That is, it is sometimes unlabeled and incorrectly labeled, and even data set imbalance. To solve for unlabeled and incorrectly labeled data, we have active and semi-supervised learning methods which are automated. So for data set imbalance, we have a method called SMOTE, that is symmetric minority oversampling technique. So this actually helps in alleviating the imbalance by creating new minority samples. Moving on to data synthesis. So this was data searching. Now we have data synthesis. So this happens when there's no data available at all. So data simulators are actually used to mimic real world data. So for example, when we talk about developing an autonomous vehicle, we know that it requires a lot of data, and during research phase to test an autonomous vehicle on road can be really dangerous. So data simulators can really help in this. So there's a toolkit called OpenAI Gym that helps in providing a variety of simulated environments. So also the use of GANs can help in like devising a facial recognition system. So it would take a lot of images to train a facial recognition system, and collecting all these different faces can be really difficult. So GANs can help by synthesizing these artificial images, and those images can be used to train a facial detection system. So now that we have data collected, we're moving on to data cleaning. So we know that web data can have a lot of noise, and this noise really affects what the model can learn. So traditionally, processes like crowdsourcing was used that required a lot of expert knowledge and is expensive. So many methods like Boost Clean and Alpha Clean were introduced to automate data cleaning. So more about this is linked in the references section. So now we have data collected and cleaned. Now we move on to data augmentation. We know data augmentation is actually like, now we have an image, we're trying to like crop it off, or we're trying to resize it, and also like turning it left and right, etc. So we're generating new samples, and this is how the model can actually learn better using all these different forms of the same image. So that's what is data augmentation. So this helps in actually generalizing the model by avoiding overfitting as well, and increases the model performance. So these are some of the data augmentation techniques that are readily available. So we have image, audio, and NLP tasks, so text. So these are the different methods that are available. Moving on to, now that we have data prepared, we're moving on to feature engineering. So what exactly is feature engineering? It's a process of extracting features from raw data so that the model can understand better. There are three main aspects to feature engineering. First is feature selection. We have feature extraction and construction. So feature extraction and construction actually involve in reducing the dimensionality of the features, while the feature construction deals with increasing this dimensionality. Now let's understand the first phase, which is feature selection. So in this algorithm, we can see that there's this phase called generation and subset evaluation. So this happens iteratively in this feature selection process. So the main purpose of this selection is to eliminate the redundant and irrelevant features. So this helps in actually simplifying the model complexity. So feature selection, it's basically generation. So it's all about search, like using search strategies to search for the best features. So we have three types of algorithms used in this. So we have complete search, and as the name indicates, in a complete search, the entire search space is explored. In heuristic search, we have sequential forward selection and sequential backward selection. So that's SFS and BFS. So it follows like a sequential order in order to search for these features. And then we have bidirectional search. So in bidirectional search, both SFS and BFS is utilized, and it's done until they result in the same subset of features. So that is what is the stopping criteria. As for random search, the most used methods are simulated annealing and genetic algorithms. So these are some of the automated methods. So now we have our feature selection complete. Now moving on to feature construction. So this involves creating new features from the raw data. Thereby, this also increases the number of samples. So some of the methods used are pre-processing transformations using like standardization, normalization, and feature discretization. So these methods will help in creating new samples. Moving on to feature extraction. Now that we saw feature increasing, the dimensionality increased. Now this method helps in decreasing that dimensionality. So, and also unlike the feature selection, the original features are allowed to be altered during this process. And the main most popular method being PCA, which is principal component analysis, and some other methods are mentioned here. Now we have our features selected and extracted as well. So we finished data preparation and feature selection. Now we are moving on to model generation. So we know that there are broadly two main categories of models. One is the traditional ML models and the other is deep neural networks. So model generation has two phases. The first is search space and next is optimization, architecture optimization. So in search phase, we have some. So what exactly search space is? It defines the structure of the model that can be designed, and the architecture optimization involves in optimizing the hyperparameters for training and model design. So now let's learn more about search space. In this, we have four types. So the first being entire structured search space. So the research paper gives us a better idea. So yeah, so these are two simplified examples of the entire structured models. So it's one of the most straightforward approaches. So we know that here on the left, this is a simplified version of the model, and this is a slightly more complicated version because it involves some skip connections, etc. So the main problem with this approach is that it lacks transferability, and also it is computationally very expensive, which is why it led to the development of the next strategy being cell-based search space. So in the cell-based search space, there's a concept of normal cell and a reduction cell. So normal cell actually can repeat n number of times, which is then followed by a reduction cell. So here in the normal, so this is a small example of how a normal cell can look like. So these are some of the operations, like there's convolution, skip, and add. So this is repeated n number of times and then it's concatenated. So this entire block is repeated n number of times, followed by, so actually the input to a normal cell and the output from the normal cell is the same. So the dimensionality of that is the same. When it goes into the reduction cell, this dimensionality is actually halved. So that's what exactly happens in this. And this only focuses on the cell level features. So as we can see here, and it completely ignores the entire network level features. Now that's why we need hierarchical search space. That's why it came into the picture. So as we can see here, some assembly level features are assembled together to form. Okay, so here, as we can see in this, yeah, so this is an example. So this is a 3-level hierarchical architecture. In the first level, what happens? An assembly level operations, primitive operations are actually assembled. And then we have level 2. So some of that is combined to form slightly more complicated features. And then it results in a final overall advanced operation. So this is the level 3 features combined together to, so this is how the search actually happens. So this is level 1, level 2, and level 3. Moving on to the next type, we have morphism based search space. So what happens? So we know that the deeper the network is, the more layers it has, the better it is with generalizability. So so what happens in morphism based search space is that we have an initial network, some transformations. So I'm sorry, here. So some ID morph transformations are applied. So this is actually function preserving. So the function of the neural network remains unaltered and can be classified into depth and width ID morph. So by using an depth ID morph, the neural network will become deeper, and using width ID morph, it can become wider, but not altering the function, as again stating that. So now we have our search space done. So we get a set of neural architectures that's suitable for our task. Now we enter architecture optimization. So in architecture optimization, these 4 processes are happening iteratively again. So in selection, what happens is a subset of the generated architectures are chosen, and then it's crossed over. So every 2 selected architecture is crossed over to get a offspring network that usually has better strength when compared to the parent network. And then we have mutation, that refers to altering learning rate and removing skip connections. Finally, moving on to the update. In this, what happens is some low performing and old architectures are actually removed. This leaves behind only robust architecture. So this is some kind of filtering that happens. These are some of the other architecture optimization techniques. So we have reinforcement learning, gradient descent based, surrogate model based, and hybrid optimization. So all of these are used to filter out the networks. So now we enter into hyperparameter optimization. So now we have some network and we want to actually select the best hyperparameter so it performs the best. So now once we have the most optimal architecture, it becomes essential to fine tune this network using different values of hyperparameters. So these are some of the most used automated methods for hyperparameter optimization, being grid and random search, Bayesian, and gradient descent based optimization. Now that we have our data prepared, we have the features engineered, and then we have the models generated, we move on to model evaluation, because we've already trained it, we've optimized the parameters as well. We move on to model evaluation. So now that the new model has been selected, we need to evaluate its performance. So these are some of the approaches that can actually accelerate the process of model evaluation. So low fidelity, here we know model training time is directly proportional to the size of its data set. So we can smartly reduce the size of the data set. For example, if it's an image data set, by actually reducing the resolution of the images, or even the number of images, we can reduce the model evaluation and training time. And then we have weight sharing strategy. The core idea here is to reuse the knowledge that's gained by the previous tasks, so we can ramp up the training time. Also, early stopping. In early stopping, what happens is once the model is being trained, we know that at some point it starts to drop. We can stop it at that time. That's why it's called early stopping. So it's used to accelerate the model evaluation time as well. Now let's enter. So we have network. NAS is network architecture search. So the performance comparisons, it's been done on the CIFAR-10 image dataset. So this is basically the entire AutoML process. So, okay, so early research that was done on this evolutionary algorithm and also RL based was that it focused more on high performance rather than on resource consumption. But later on, they've attempted to improve the search efficiency by not compromising on model performance. So we can clearly understand that here. So this table actually, so sorry, yeah. So this table indicates, so here, this is the early, so this was manual and here starts. So this was the most ancient methods. So here we can see how the number of parameters used were so high and it reduced going further. Similarly, we can see this where the number of GPU days used were like so high. So it was in thousands and slowly it actually reduces to just a few hours here. So the next two slides talk about that. So this is the table. So we can see how it's actually reducing. And so now, okay, now that we saw the different automation strategies that are used in AutoML and the different phases, we looked into what these phases do. We can talk about some open problems and future directions that are required in order to actually make AutoML successful. So the existing search spaces have proven to be efficient, but they do require some level of human interference. This introduces bias in the AutoML, and we want the AutoML to actually perform everything on its own. So there should be absolutely no human interference there. So I think we're still moving towards that, according to the article, according to the research paper as well. So now moving on to NLP tasks, this AutoML is yet to actually produce models that can match up to human designed ones. So we have some area of improvement there. Next, we have another important direction for future research is to learn how to interpret the results of these AutoML mathematically. So once the AutoML outputs all of the results, it sometimes becomes difficult to explain why exactly something is happening. So that's an area for improvement. Also, reproducibility is an ever challenging problem in ML, and it's all carried over to AutoML as well, because it's so difficult and it takes so many resources to train, and to reproduce this is really challenging. So also coming on to data sets, datasets that is used in AutoML research is mostly labeled and well structured, but data that is in real world is chaotic. So we need AutoML systems that can actually perform well even in the real world chaotic data. So now we've seen various AutoML applications in this article, from data preparation to model evaluation. We've also shed some light on the less explored areas which might need some attention. So with this being said, it is worthy to note that AutoML is a powerful invention that allows even beginners in the field of ML to build and deploy AI applications. So AutoML marks a huge milestone in taking the world towards self-improving AI. So I would want to thank my professor Vijay for inspiring me to work on, to understand more about AutoML and understand its benefits. So these are some of the references. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.